better understanding of the world around you, for a greater knowledge of the world you live in. Wolf and Dessauer in downtown Fort Wayne and downtown Huntington brings the Screen News Digest, a chapter of living history, into your classroom.
The ship is the Shirley Lights, her destination Cuba, and you are aboard, sailing past historic Morro Castle, entering Havana Harbor for a close-up look at Cuba today. A Russian tanker riding at anchor welcomes the visitor to the communist island. At dockside, a Castro soldier stands guard as the ship unloads 7,000 tons of food and medical supplies. The cargo is part of the $53 million ransom paid to Cuba for the release of prisoners captured in the abortive Bay of Pigs invasion. Evidence of communist ideas and infiltration is everywhere, in Russian tractors, farm equipment, and other supplies piled up on the piers, in poster after poster glorifying the bearded dictator, and in the Soviet trucks with their red stars that ride through a once peaceful city now turned into an armed camp. Cuba and her people, especially her young people, lead a disciplined and regimented life. Students must live where the government tells them to live, dress the way the government tells them to dress, learn what the government wants them to learn. Russian is the favored subject in foreign language classes, and all history courses follow the government line. Fidel Castro realizes the importance of training children in the communist way. Touring the island fortress, Screen News Digest cameramen are allowed to photograph only certain areas, but the films record significant sights: Russian ships at pier after pier, sprawling factories standing idle, and coastal roads with telltale patches where landmines once were planted. Sugar is still king of the Cuban economy, but it's an economy that is sick and suffering from an embargo by America and free world countries. There is a food shortage that grows worse every day. Stores are stocked with canned goods from Russia, Red China, and other satellite countries, but there is not enough, and what there is must be rationed. Food may be scarce, but propaganda is not. The newest Russian-made movies, in Cinerama, are shown in Havana theaters. Cuba's transformation into a communist satellite is complete. The power of the police state can be seen every night on any street. Havana is no longer the Paris of the New World. How much is it worth to escape from Castro's island fortress? 1,200 Cubans exchange every worldly possession they have for the opportunity to sail for America aboard the Shirley Lights. The exit permit that allows them to board the ship is bought at a high price, but it's a price gladly paid. There are 14 stretcher cases and 7 paralytic victims carried aboard. Red Cross cots and blankets provide overnight bedding in the hold of the 500-foot freighter. Though crowded together, they do not complain. Leaving Cuba, says one refugee, is like coming out of a dungeon into free air. To young and old, the bitter memories of the past soon will be erased by the bright promise of the future. In North America, Europe, and Asia, in countries and cities throughout the Northern Hemisphere, it will be remembered as the coldest and cruelest winter of the 20th century. Japan is buried beneath a bonsai of white. Thousands of flimsily built houses collapse under the heavy weight of tons of snow. Family wash is not hung out, but staked out to dry. In some areas, 11 feet of snow fall in 2 weeks, paralyzing everything in 25-foot drifts, hiding mailboxes under a wall of white. Hardest hit in Japan are the railroads. Passengers on the 6-hour Niigata to Tokyo run arrive 106 hours late, almost 5 days without light, food, or heat. The savage winter, terrifying in its fury, can also be spectacular in its scenery. Niagara Falls wears a shroud of white as Canada and the United States shiver in sub-freezing and sub-zero cold. It's as though a new ice age has descended upon the Northern Hemisphere. Harbors and rivers from Korea to the Mississippi, from the North to the Black Seas are ice-locked. On a single day, 20 of America's 64 major cities record temperature readings of 0 or below. And in some places along Europe's Baltic coast, the sea itself turns to ice. Snow falls for the first time in history in many of Europe's resort areas. Sunny Spain is anything but, and farther south, 20 inches of snow way down the palm trees of Sicily. As the storms change countrysides into polar ice caps, emergency feeding stations are set up for farm animals and wildlife. Cold and hunger overcome their instinctive fear of man. And in Germany, reindeer come in herds to be fed and to be saved. When animals cannot reach feeding stations, volunteers ski out to the frozen fields. Thousands of sheep and cattle are saved, but thousands more freeze or starve to death. A lamb huddled in a snowbank is found and saved in a life-saving operation that's repeated in countries all across the stricken 3 continents. The assault of snow and cold and storms is relentless, grim evidence that man may be able to forecast and prepare for all kinds of weather, but he cannot yet control its full and awesome fury. And so men and beasts suffer and try to fight back against the wicked winter that creates an international disaster. Hundreds of persons die, thousands of animals perish. Destruction mounts into the millions of dollars as North America, Europe, and Asia struggle to dig out from the worst winter of the century.
(1954). French Indochina is in its death agony. 8 years of civil war have left a land and its people ravaged and starving. Colonialism is ended. In its place, a new way of life in the shadows of the Red Star. For France, the defeat is final, the humiliation complete, as the triumphant communist guerrillas carry their banner into the city of Hanoi to claim the spoils of war. Out of the jungle comes Ho Chi Minh, the elusive architect of the Red Victory in Indochina. The little old man with a funny goatee who plotted the rebel campaign of ambush, murder, terror, and killing. In triumph, communist propaganda tries to project a new image of Uncle Ho Chi Minh, disciple of Red China's Mao Zedong, and now president of the new satellite state of North Vietnam. The 17th parallel becomes the boundary between the puppet communist country and independent South Vietnam, curling like a snake around the Indochina Peninsula. But the Red Legions do not remain north
of the frontier for long. The ugly war that drove the French from Indochina is begun again, this time to infiltrate, to undermine, to overthrow South Vietnam. Their raid complete, the Red Guerrillas retreat into the jungle night. A devout and peaceful people, weary of war, struggling to build a future from the wreckage of the fighting against the French, prays that their new nation will somehow survive and endure. In their grave hour of great danger, the Vietnamese rally behind their president, Ngo Dinh Diem, who will lead the fight against the communists, laboring 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is no easy struggle. The communist guerrillas are clever and cunning, and the advantage of surprise is always on their side. They can hit and run before government troops can reach the remote jungle outposts. And even when found, the rebels, with their communist-made arms and equipment, exact a heavy toll. The cause seems hopeless, the battle lost, as the Red Guerrillas, called the Viet Cong, strike again and again along the border. South Vietnam cannot go it alone. America makes a fateful decision. It will come to the aid of the embattled little nation. General Maxwell Taylor is sent on a fact-finding mission to the capital city of Saigon. At the palace of President Diem, General Taylor reports that the United States will start at once to send equipment and instructors to help arm and train the country's 150,000-man army. Guns and GIs are soon in South Vietnam. America is showing the world its deep commitment to freedom, wherever and whenever it is in danger. Everyone has a place on the firing line in this new and unorthodox kind of guerrilla warfare. Saigon, with its 1.25 million persons, is invaded. But this is a friendly invasion, and the American serviceman soon becomes an everyday sight in the city's busy streets. There is a new air of hope. Victory is far from won, but South Vietnam is no longer alone. East is east, and west is west. But here in defense of freedom, the twain have met. As the forgotten war drags on week after week, month after month, American military men devise new ways of combating the Viet Cong rebels. Cargo planes are used to supply the frontier villages that are the prime targets of the guerrillas. This is the very frontier of freedom. The jungles where the borders are less guarded, the enemy harder to find, and the dangers of communism less apparent to the people who have so little. And so, not only military supplies, but food, drugs, medicine are dropped into villages in danger of slipping behind the bamboo curtain. On the battle line, the South Vietnamese army, too long on the defensive, now goes on the offense, carrying the fighting into those areas where it knows the Viet Cong are operating. With American arms and know-how, the government forces are able to blunt, to stop, and many times to turn back the communist rebels. A skirmish here, a battle there. Victories and setbacks, setbacks and victories. This is the way it goes in the forgotten war, half a world away. In 1962, Defense Secretary McNamara makes a battlefront inspection tour to study new means of stepping up the attacks on the Viet Cong. Soon, American helicopters are being pressed into service to ferry South Vietnamese troops to the battle areas. Now, on receiving word of a Viet Cong attack, the government forces can be airlifted to the scene and engage the enemy before he can flee. The advantage of surprise still belongs to the rebels, but no longer can they count on a delay of hours or even days before the arrival of well-trained and fully equipped Army troops. American aid is turning the tide. In village after village, battle after battle, the South Vietnamese are victorious. It is they who are putting the enemy to rout. The Viet Cong are not the conquerors, but the conquered. Communism has lost, and freedom has won. It is a victory for free men everywhere. This is the stake they have in the forgotten war in South Vietnam.
To widen your horizons, to stimulate your interest in things going on about you, Wolf and Dessauer, one of America's great department stores, has presented the Screen News Digest as a public service.